Good morning. I'm international author and TV subject matter, Nikki Pattillo. And today for our 5 minutes, we're going to talk about heaven. I may have to do this in several parts, so I'm going to call this Heaven Part 1. It's a little controversial what I'm going to tell you today, but I love that I tell you things that you haven't heard before. Previously, we talked about how our souls are made of a prism of light. That angels aren't what they look like. As my master angel, it looks like a glob of liquid mercury with sparkling lights in her. And we talked a little bit about equanimity, this wonderful word that the angels are talking about, which is the balance that is born of wisdom and how we can see things in a broader context. So when I talk to my angels, it's always a debate about heaven and hell. And they tell me that all souls go to heaven, but there's a lower form of heaven that some souls go to. So I refer this to as hell. So there is a heaven and a hell, but you need to know that all souls, whether they go to heaven or hell, have the ability to reincarnate and improve their souls, to help master their souls. So the soul entering and exiting our bodies. The angels tell me that the soul comes into the baby when you were somewhere between 2 to 4 months pregnant. That this is a much bigger, they kind of call it a project. The soul coming in is much more difficult than the soul exiting. When we exit our bodies, our souls pop out very quickly. Going in is a little bit more difficult and requires help from the angels. So before we enter the body of the baby, we have spent quite some time with our angels, our guides, and our soul groups planning our lives. And we reincarnate over and over for our soul's mastery. So we watch previous lives. We go to the Akashic records. We are still learning and growing as souls, even though we are still in heaven and not back on this earth. Also, we can reincarnate in different areas, but people love coming to Earth because it's a very tough planet. And the souls that excel here are very masterful souls. So we go to the Akashic records, and just quickly, I want to say that my aunt that had passed on came back to me and told me that things are much bigger on that side than we could ever possibly imagine. And my angels have told me, when we go to our souls exit our bodies, heaven is bigger than you can imagine, bigger than you can imagine. So we're planning our lives. We're going to the Akashic records. We're reviewing old lives. We come into our bodies, and before our soul comes in, we kind of sit on a platform where our angels are reminding us, don't forget this. Don't forget this. We've got things we've got to tick to master for our spiritual mastery, for the mastery of our souls. I remember my angels showing me I'm on my platform about to come into the body, and they were like, don't forget these eyes. These are the eyes of your husband. And I remember the first time I met Charlie, immediately something about his eyes. And I went to my parents and I said, that's going to be my husband. They laughed at me. That was 21 years ago. But I remembered being on that platform and my angels reminding me about, remember these eyes. These are going to be the eyes of your husband. So we're reminded of things before we come in. So when we exit, we often have just a couple of people there, and you may not have people. So we don't have a massive amount of people. We may have one angel and one loved one, or 2 angels and one loved one. There'll be 1 to 4, depending on the experience of your soul. Some souls have reincarnated 1,000 times, and it's like driving home from the grocery store. We don't need anyone to meet us when we pass over. We pass over, we follow that silver ribbon straight to our soul group. So only younger souls tend to need people to grab them when they exit and take them down that silver ribbon and get them to their soul group. Yeah, so there's not a lot of people there. So let's talk just a minute about what I've been channeling. I've been channeling about spatial consciousness on my 5th book. The angels have been telling me that the space in between the space is just as important as the space. Anyway, I'll get it all figured out. Don't worry. But it's like in between your 2 countertops, that space is important. And it's the same with the universe and within our bodies and everything around us. The space between the space is important. But it is election time and people are vomiting hatred. And I talked to my angels about peace, peacefulness. And they told me when addressing peacefulness, we must remember that intolerance leads to hatred and division. We must teach our children that the idea that dialogue, not violence, is the best and most practical way to solve conflict. Our children and future generations have a great responsibility to ensure that our world becomes a more peaceful place for all. And it's with greater clarity that we must see that our spiritual well-being depends not only on religion, but on our innate human nature, our natural affinity for goodness, compassion, and caring for others, regardless of whether or not we belong to a religion, a political group, etc. We all have a fundamental and profoundly innate sense of morals and ethics within our spirits. We need to nurture this shared innate sense. I also talked about how we must learn now that humanity is all one, that we are all connected to each other physically, mentally, and emotionally, and we as humanity are still focusing far too much on our differences instead of our commonalities. Again, we must live in loving tolerance of each other's difference in order to find peace on this planet. Finally, the angels were telling me to strive for the goal of living in great peace. We can be a vision of spiritual and social unity. We must all find a place where we are genuinely identify and care for one another rather than simply tolerate each other's existence. They say that peace starts within each and every one of us. And when there is peace within ourselves, we can then have peace around us. Perhaps we have been growing and evolving as human beings long enough now and have the capabilities to find peace, to live peace, and to be peace. Thank you for being with me today, and I will start on Heaven Part 2. Have a great day.